Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, I'm Nerdic Steve, and today I'm joined by Dell or at Mootley over on the TikToks and Twitter. I got links in the description as usual. You'd be so kind to kind of introduce yourself and tell people kind of a little bit about you and what you do.
Hi, I am Dell, otherwise known as Mootley on TikTok. I am a D&D player on some live streams, and I DM home games, which I adore doing. I am from Australia, so I've forgotten what sleep is, interacting mostly with American audiences.
Yeah.
But yeah, have fun talking mostly about things like D&D and ethics, world building, and my latest rant is disability inclusion in D&D. So just, I really enjoy talking about making your tables as open as possible for everybody.
Awesome. And we need all those things in our games. Honestly, sometimes I just forget to put things in my game and don't think about it. Like, because I was thinking about it, and I think I've maybe put in, off the top of my head, I can only think of like one disabled character, over the years. And she was like the head of a exiled drow house in one of the games that I was playing, and she's wheelchair bound. But I just don't. I think some of us don't think about it.
That's the exciting thing that's kind of happened in D&D over the last few years. Because I'll admit, I am system agnostic. I originally started playing a long time ago when I was 17 and started with Vampire the Dark Ages. Wow, that was an introduction. Call of Cthulhu and some very dark games. Had an amazing DM who taught me everything. And then I kind of like, with relationships in life, didn't play for ages. I became single and was like, oh, I really want to get back into D&D and this kind of stuff. And then with the whole, critical role movement, what it's really allowed is all these new people to come to the table. So it's asking lots of really new, interesting questions about what D&D is and how you can play it and how to have fun with it. And so these questions are starting to get asked. And there's amazing people who have been doing inclusive gaming all this time. But yeah, it's just about recognizing that the world and therefore your fantasy world can be as colorful and as interesting as you like. And it tells really different, interesting stories, I think, rather than I am an ex-hero and the hero's journey. Because we've all told the hero's journey how many times? I think even if you look at the last few Star Wars movies.
Yeah, or all of them.
Yes. Almost anything that's coming out these days. It just adds different color, and especially with people, I think, really starting to embrace homebrewing in the last few years along with that. It does bring up some difficult questions sometimes, and it can be confronting sometimes, honestly. But I just think you can tell some really amazing, wonderful stories when you start, opening that up. I had one guy tell me an amazing story about in his game, and this was a creator with a disability, Darth Thoughts 5, who was telling me he created in his world a blind woman and a Medusa who were best friends. And part of their journey is the Medusa was taking this blind woman to all these different places to experience these places and touch them and get to know them. And the concept of this pairing of a Medusa and a blind woman, to me, is just beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's this blind woman who can't be turned to stone because she can't see. But it also means that she doesn't judge the Medusa for everything and doesn't treat her with fear. So you have this really amazing dynamic that can exist in that, in a really beautiful story. So I really love it. I think it's just, asking some really, really cool questions for me.
Well, yeah, and the more questions we ask, the more interesting directions we can go in, and like the games evolve, the worlds evolve. Like my issue generally with like Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk is like or any generic fantasy, and the reason why I tend to do more homebrew is because it is all just like the regurgitation of Tolkien's worlds, right? With a slight twist, right? So, like, well, if I'm going to play that, I might as well just play my own with my own twist. which again, like when I say slight twist, we're like, that's barely there at all, right? It's almost the same. So,
Yeah.
so I've always kind of like, or our group has always kind of done more homebrewing than anything.
Yeah. And as a system agnostic, I will turn around and say, go play as many different games as possible, because there are games that are better suited and systems are better suited to certain things. So don't drive yourself crazy trying to wrangle D&D into like Cyberpunk, or wrangle D&D into like Star Wars, or wrangle D&D into something that it's not made for. It's a fantastic gateway drug, D&D.
Yeah.
It's I find it, for people who are coming new to the table, who the skills system is fairly simple, really. It could be so much more interesting, but it's really simple. But it can give people a great taster and a great gateway to so many other games.
I actually think, to add to that, I actually just think D&D is a terrible gateway game, to be honest with you. It's easy. It's a rules light version of D&D, but it's not rules light. There's so many easier games out to learn. But you were saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's about the population. There's always been more D&D players, so it's very easy for people to walk into a store. It's also got the brand recognition down in there, and so it's the less fear to it. But there's a lot of guys out there who I really champion their work on TikTok, fighting the good fight for indie games.
Some of which do it aggressively.
Yes. Fighting for independent games. As I said, I'm going to be playing a Deadlands game soon, which I love. I love Call of Cthulhu. I do understand the problematic nature of Lovecraft, but I do love the horror element that involves in that. I really like horror games. Cyberpunk is wonderful. There's just so many really cool games to get out there and play. You just got to be brave with it and have a go, because when you think about it, half of these games are easier to learn than D&D. So people worry about, I've got to go learn something new, and it's like, no, give it a go. And there's so many amazing, wonderful, independent game designers out there that are just like making such good stuff that it's just like, go out and try it.
Yeah. What is your go-to non-D&D game?
Ooh. For just pure fun, it would be Call of Cthulhu. I think Call of Cthulhu, sanity rolls, everything, the atmosphere of it is just fantastic. I just love it to death. My heart, however, as problematic as it may be, because I was doing this in the early 2000s when there was certain books published by World of Darkness that Vampire Dark Ages will always be my first love, and the ethics system within it, which is the paths and roads system, and this concept of having a beast that exists inside of you that you have to wrangle with some kind of ethics system. Coming from that and then playing D&D and the alignment table, I was like, no wonder everyone's a murder hobo. Like,
yeah,
there's no mechanical advantage or disadvantage for being anything. You could just be whatever you want, which is fun. But I was like, I came from a system where it's all like, if you commit a sin, that's a whole thing, and you can go off wildness to the beast. Or if you are really holy and stay to your path, you can reach Gehenna, and this whole concept of like perfection as a spiritual vampire creature. So yeah, I just think there's just so many different ways to do role playing that are out there.
Especially now with D&D and alignment. Before, like, if you acted out of alignment and the GM started going, well, you're shifting away from your alignment, there were in-game penalties for that. Yeah. I don't know if they were enforced, but at all tables, but they definitely was. Like, you couldn't gain levels, or you would lose levels or something like that. Which which was kind of painful. But 5e, it's just like there's nothing to it.
And you can have, and we've had on TikTok entire like days and days worth of like discussions on the ethics of the alignment table, because it is just so obtuse and really means, and nowadays in the concept of like, look, you bring a whole bunch of philosophy and gender studies students to the alignment table, and we're all going to sit there for like 3 days having a discussion about what is the true meaning of true neutral and lawful evil and selfishness, and and we're just like, it's just 9 squares, guys. It's just 9 squares.
Yeah, it's and a lot of it's like perception, right? Like what no one sees themselves as the villain in their own story. So, how do you make that line up? So I don't know. I'm ready for it to go. I know some people like it as a guideline and they like it in there. But I'm kind of like, either give it some teeth and make it mean something, or just get rid of it.
Yeah, it's quite funny. Like, I think a high example of this is I have been playing in a stream game. When it first started out, there was a good party and an evil party. And I was in the evil party. And hey, it's fun. But the funny thing was, the good party had much higher body count than the evil party for the first 10 episodes. The good party were like, yeah, kill people, save the day. And the evil party were like, we're just going to manipulate and double cross people constantly and not have to kill anyone and get more money and get more money and get more money off people. So then we did equalize it later with a pretty much mass extinction event to a whole bunch of people. But, for the majority of it, we were like, we'll kill you if necessary. But being evil is more interesting and deep than just I go around killing people.
My early experiences with evil campaigns weren't great. So I have written them off. And also, like, anymore now at this point in my life, I'm just like, I feel like the regular world has enough evil in it for me without having to role play as an evil entity or character. So that's 100%. What being the DM's for.
Exactly. And to be honest, for most of my bad guys in my games, they're all gaslighters. My bad guys, you hate them because they demean you, they are sarcastic, and they treat you like crap, and they have more power over you, and you know it, and you can't do anything about it. More like real life bad guys for me, rather than let's stroke my beard, kind of guy.
You it's funny because now you're making me think of another TikToker that kind of like mashed up some political stuff with with monsters McConnell from D&D.
Are we talking about Lich McConnell?
We are.
And how both the Republican and Democratic Party all united with some of the most amazing impressions that I've ever seen together to defeat Lich McConnell. That was amazing.
So you mentioned being on some stream games. What games are you on streaming?
So at the moment, mostly seen by an Australian audience. So I stream on the Ethicist with Twitch every week, except for this week because he's too busy taking photos of men beating each other up. And then I'm going to be doing a Deadlands one-shot.
That's a very specific kink.
Yes. We actually met, me and the DM actually met through when I used to be a mixed martial arts referee and he is a photographer. And that's how we originally met. And really enjoy him because we've got very different points of view on the world, but enjoy arguing with each other. So I like to not surround myself with a echo chamber. And you would laugh if you see the boys that I play with in that game versus my TikTok content. You would be very surprised. There is nothing like having a battle rapper, real life battle rapper as a bard in a party. It does bring an extra spice to when vicious mockery and different and cutting words gets cast.
I bet.
It's glorious. It is glorious. And then I've got a big project that I'm working on with a whole bunch of people, hopefully that will come out in October that I can't talk about too much. And then next year, once I get my streaming computer all up and running, I'm going to run a one-shot based off my Reimagining of the Drow campaign. So I'm going to do a podcast where I bring on some of my favorite creators, have a chat to them, and then get them to help me create something in that world. And then after that series, then go and actually do the one shot based around that. So pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, you've got a fairly extensive series on the Reimagining Drow. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do.
Well, extensive in like it might be 9 minutes long, but
yes, it is. It is. It's like, how can you put all these really big thoughts about these things into one thing? I am a firm believer in that the intrinsic issues of the drow still exist. And just because you put two different types of drow in two different, completely other places and say, oh, they were there all along, you just never met them. Yeah. Oh, now we've fixed it. It's fixed, guys. We can go home. We fixed it. It's all good. So I wanted to take the drow and do something different with them. And I kind of posited them kind of like the Night's Watch. So that the world of the Undercommon is dark and dangerous, and they are the last bastion against the things that come from both the Undercommon and also things that have arrived in the Undercommon, that don't belong there. So when you're talking about your mind flayers and things like that don't actually come there, they're from somewhere else. And also some things with different planes and stuff. And so the basic argument is you turn Lolth from like this horrible demonic queen into what are spiders really in our society? Spiders really in our society are actually these really helpful creatures that create super complex webs and help us get rid of pests. So you change her into a creature that fights the dark. And then you take Illustri, there's always been something about Illustri that annoyed the hell out of me. And that was this concept of, oh dear, good drow, follow me to the light where everything is better and you'll be, cleaned under the spirit of the light. And it's like, what? Like, it's this concept of,
and dance naked. That seems to be a big part of it too.
Dance naked, come to the light, and you will be better than you were before, as if somehow really playing on that super basic concept of light versus dark. And so I reposited her as a trickster god. So if you have a society that's built all around this protection from the upper world, from the Underdark, and there's some creature that is trying to tempt you away from your role in what you're supposed to do for society, well, she's a trickster god. And you don't even have to change much about her. You can even use her holy texts that are already written and just turn it on its head, and she becomes this really creepy game player who wants to tempt people and take them away from what they're supposed to do. And then I thought you could have some really fun interactions with them and dwarves. And this kind of almost like the dwarf elf thing from Lord of the Rings of, unhappy allies who don't really like each other that much, don't get along, but shit, we both have an invested interest in this area. Some rogue dwarf company has gone in and dug too deep somewhere and they've set something off. And now that we've all got to band together to go fight that thing. And so you can always have a lot of fun with, unwanted allies and all those kinds of alliances along the way with that. So, yeah, there's a lot of fun you can have with them. I just think they've got so much potential for me.
Yeah, I do like the idea.
Really cool.
I like the idea of the prankster god luring them away from their duties. Come dance naked with us instead of holding back the things of darkness.
Exactly. And it's like, there's so many if you just have to tweak them just a little to get there. It's not a massive leap or massive change. It's just going, if I just change it like this, you can change their whole dynamic. So the idea of the one shot is to build something around that, possibly with the dwarves hitting some planar interruption or something, because I would like to try and bring in, I think they get underutilized. I do like Horizon Walkers quite a lot. I think they're very cool, but they're so campaign specific. They have to really work in a campaign where what they do has use. Otherwise, they're just a bit
detecting
boring.
portals when there are no portals is not very useful.
Like, exactly.
It's the Aquaman meme. My ability to speak to fish isn't going to help me here.
Yeah, exactly. So, get Aquaman and put him back in the sea kind of thing, but with Horizon Walkers. And I think, there's just so much to be explored that you can play around with. Like, for example, I think that factions in Faerun are really underdone. I think we could just do so much with my personal favorite, the Emerald Enclave. In the game that me and my friends play, the Emerald Enclave are actually eco-terrorists. And there's just so much lore. It's like, I'm a big fan of homebrewing, and I'm a big fan of filling in what's there, but there's just nothing really there.
Yeah.
Especially with the Emerald Enclave. It's like, there's people and there's some druid circles, and they're out there somewhere doing something. It's like, and I guess coming from World of Darkness games, especially in the early 2000s, where there was lore upon lore upon lore upon lore upon lore that you could build off, and characters after character after character after character that you can build off. And as someone who did come in with 5e, that's where I came in on D&D. And then I look at these campaign settings, and the only really super memorable campaign character that anyone really talks about is Strahd. There's and maybe Tiamat, but that's Tiamat. There's nothing really, there's no one super iconic. And it's just give us more to play with, and we can adjust that. And I think that's sometimes why people come and say, I'm going to DM for the first time and I'm really scared, because there's not those things that people want more. And I guess that's the fantastic thing about, the DMs Guild and all the supplements and stuff people make. But again, people don't really know that it's out there unless you point them in that direction.
So, I mean, when I got into the hobby, TSR had a huge writing wing. And there was I've read so many Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, Ravenloft novels, you could hide behind them at this point, probably hundreds. And so I feel we don't have that anymore. So, I feel the older players probably got a lot of that from the novelizations.
Yeah.
Right. And 100%. Also they also did box sets, right? Back then, and there was a lot more, so they went a lot more in depth probably in those characters, right? And like you said, now they don't seem iconic to someone just coming in, but if you've been playing through all the editions, some of them are more familiar to you because you've seen all the different iterations.
Exactly.
And there's more backstory to them. It's just you may not have access to it as a new player because with each edition of D&D, they try and pretend the other editions don't exist.
Yeah. It's yeah.
And at the same time, use all the same stuff. So it's really bizarre.
110%.
So they gotta they have to catch the new audience up and figure out how to still engage the older audience at the same time, I guess.
I guess how blessed are they by the whole Critical Role thing and Matt Mercer providing his whole world and all those stories.
Imagine,
that was just a catch. Thanks.
Imagine Critical Role decides to stick with Pathfinder. or Paizo had the foresight, and I don't really think it took much to have been hey, we like the fact that you're doing our Pathfinder game. We would like you to keep doing that. Here's an incentive.
Could you imagine
the misstep that they made there? Someone. So I wonder if anyone's had to been talked off a ledge from that, because that would probably completely change what Paizo is right now.
I think that would change the whole dynamics of the whole industry,
Yeah.
to be honest. Yeah, that would be insane. That
And
would be
also,
insane.
it wasn't like Wizards of the Coast. It wasn't like they figured it out either.
No.
They just all like Paizo had the misfortune, and Wizards had the fortune of 5e just being a better system to stream. Like,
Yes. I mean, it's like not that I want to bring any attention to certain people, but when someone recently turned out how they're revolutionizing stuff by saying the mechanic's really simple. It's a percentage dice for attack and a percentage dice for defense. And just like, and then you have to add them. Oh, love, no. We're not good at maths.
yeah.
We're not good at maths. And the current world has made everyone dependent on like Roll20 and D&D Beyond. I roll dice because I love the actual action of rolling dice.
Well, also
it makes me super happy, but so many people don't even roll dice anymore. They just press the button and it tells them, because when you're rolling, as I've seen some people, 36 D6 for some obscene thing that they've figured out of buffing this and that and this, while I sit there going, oh my God, that poor DM.
I can break it down even simpler than that, right? Because you're probably old enough to remember when we memorized telephone numbers.
Yes.
Think about
I still know my family telephone number from back in the day.
Think about how many numbers we memorized. And now, like, I couldn't imagine, but yeah, like that part of my brain doesn't exist anymore, because like I just push a button and I put it like I have external RAM for that at this point, or hard drive space for that. I don't need it. It's not necessary. And I feel like, when people do things that are overly complicated and stupid, it's just like, why? Like, first edition and second edition, the rules, they were still kind of rules light as far as D&D goes, but the rules that they had were overly complicated. So like there wasn't many of them, and then like when 3.5 came out, it simplified the rules and just added a lot more of them. And then 4E was kind of like, well, it was kind of like a codification, simplification, still a lot of rules. And then 5E just, kind of streamlined that even more. And like the older I get personally, the more I want like rules like games that I can like learn in a single sitting and not have to read a 400-page book.
Someone in the chat, his name is Seacow Explosion. He's on TikTok. I love him. He's the best. He said, I have a maths degree. Basic addition and subtraction is still too complex for gameplay. Yes, it is. We can't do maths, even though half of us have degrees. It's very sad. And yeah, when mechanics like that get in the way of gameplay, it just, why? Like, yeah, it blows my mind. Like, it's a really interesting phenomenon to watch. I am a role play heavy DM by nature, but I'm also, I think I confuse myself sometimes. I do like optimizing characters. I will read to try and figure out what this character can do. Like, I play an artificer in one of my games, and they're all about that. As soon as you start putting infusions and all that kind of stuff. But role playing has become a very, very, and I think as someone said, streaming changed gameplay, not the other way around, in my view. Streaming has really encouraged and pushed role play even further, I think, than ever before. It is not that people weren't doing wonderful, amazing role play at all, but you do have new players coming into the game who, it's performance. This is they're playing their story, and the dice help, and the fact that their characters can do cool things helps. So when you complicate the game even further for those people, they kind of shut off and are like, but I just want to play. Why are you making it hard for me? So I do find it really interesting seeing the interactions between, I think, everyone who comes from gaming, where we're like, I'm going to make the best character in this character path that I studied for this Assassin's Creed character to do this thing so they can do that thing so they can do that thing, versus people who are just like, man, I just want to play. Leave me alone. My character can smite shit. It's great. It's like, it's very interesting to see this interaction between these different generations and the way different people play. And then you've got people who come across from wargaming who are, want to fight. I DM'd a game where for 6 months we had one combat. Now that would drive most people insane. Most people would be like, this is dumb. Let me fight.
I don't need combat in the game, but I do need drama and conflict, right? Like, and it's not the same. And sometimes people, they kind of conflate that or confuse that. And like, and I hear people like, well, you need combat to play D&D. I mean, it's a part of the game, but you don't need it as long as you find other ways to test the players and their characters.
It's about tension, all right, and building tension within stories. And tension, it's like why you can have stories and movies and TV shows where people don't fight because of those tension buildings moments. That particular game, I started those characters off at level 0. And they were level 0 for 6 months. And they were terrified the entire time that they were going to die at any moment. And for most people, again, be like, what do you mean you don't let them, they can't do anything? And it's like, well, they're teenagers who are going off to a school forcefully recruited. It's a very fascist world that they live in. And you don't just one day wake up and you're a rogue. And you don't just one day wake up and you can suddenly hold an axe and do all this thing. Part of their journey is surviving to the school, which included lots of trap dungeons, puzzle dungeons, dream sequences, one combat in which they were all basically, the players were literally like holding their dice with white knuckles as they tried to survive. And then when they got to the school and all passed their first test to get accepted into different classes with psychotic teachers, then they were allowed to level up. And it was such a massive achievement for them because this running tension for them of, are we even going to make it? Is this character that I'm getting attached to even going to get to the first level? Created this whole amazing sense of achievement for them of surviving. And it also meant that death matters. So, for example, 2 of the party members are fighters. The fighting teacher is basically, Homelander. He is psychotic. He's basically Homelander. He's called Isaac the Heartbreaker, and he walks around telling people to write that down. He literally does not care if any of his students live or die. And part of his first test was they had to face off against other characters, and you kill them, and then you get into his class. And so in this game, these characters had been preparing, these 2 characters were nobles, and they'd been preparing for this moment their whole life, but they'd never actually killed anyone. And so we had this great big dramatic death scene, all this kind of stuff happening. And then these role players were wonderful because they literally played killing someone and the reality of having to kill someone for the first time in a completely unjust way for the pleasure of someone else completely to survive and to get into this class. And they played it over sessions. It was amazing. And like, yes, there's your combat, but the tension wasn't about the actual fight. The tension was all the history and the story for those characters around that fight. And that's where the things that I enjoy. I enjoy playing with my players' heads in that kind of context.
And I mean, that's the cool thing about RPGs in general is you can have whatever kind of experience you want. The hardest thing about RPGs is just matching up the right people with the right experiences and, the right table.
100%. It's like about a couple of months ago, I literally put, because I started talking about Vampire the Dark Age and Vampire the Masquerade. And one of my big things is talking about safety when playing. And I think there's a lot of people, there's a bit of a movement a little bit that I worry about sometimes with therapy and D&D. I am worked in trauma-informed spaces before, and absolutely D&D is fantastic for therapy in a therapeutic situation with trained people who know what they're doing, and everyone has consent. And there's been people running around on TikTok talking about, yay, therapy and D&D. And you're like, no, don't do, no.
Yeah. Someone was telling me about a panel they watched, and it was a bunch of people talking about using gaming as therapy. None of them were therapists.
Yeah.
And they're like, maybe as a DM, you should read some psychology books. I'm like, that sounds terrible. That sounds like the worst thing ever. Like, anytime we touched on anything even close to that with a video, it was always preceded by with, do not listen to anything we say, you will die. We're morons. You know, go see a real professional.
The worst thing you can ever get is someone with good intentions and a little bit of understanding, and they can do insane damage. And yeah, so, and for me, my players do, and I do play around with a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of consent forms going on, what's okay and what's not okay. But my general concern is a lot of, that was an official word. Yeah, WCT. Yeah. There have even been people claiming to be licensed. And again, because I'm Australian, right? So if you claim to be a therapist, it's a big deal here. You literally have to have a gazillion qualifications coming out your butt. But the word therapist in America is very different, and it can mean 100 different things. And there was someone on D&D TikTok claiming to be a therapist and was like talking, basically did a little meme thing about, yeah, it's totally cool to do therapy with your friends in D&D. It's like, no. Yeah. And stop. No.
Yeah.
And that's where I've kind of found myself with this like ranty old 39-year-old going, no, don't do that. And it's so much of like, okay, so most of our generation and your generation grew up playing face-to-face and home, like face-to-face games, like in a game store or your group of friends or people you met. And you did occasionally come across some bad eggs. We all have horror stories of that one weirdo that really took things too far, but you at least generally know lots of the people at the table. With D&D nowadays and TTRPGs these days, people meet people on the internet and play. People sign up for things on a message board and play. You don't know who these people are that you play with quite a lot. So if you bring your trauma to that table, A, those people did not consent to do that with you. Like, this is your own problem. And B, there can be bad people at the table that can really screw you up. It's like, as I said, I did this video after I started talking about the paths and ethic roads in Vampire the Dark Ages. And I literally had to turn around and go and say, okay, I love Vampire. I love all the World of Darkness games, but there are people in this game who you will play with who aren't necessarily the best people to play with. This is one of those games that you need to be aware of what you're doing. When you play any kind of game that involves a heavy psychological element, or I'm a bad vampire, or by nature the creatures or the people, or an evil campaign where you're doing horrific things in it, you need to be at a table where there's a level of trust, and you need to be at a table where, well, there's just not a psycho sitting next to you. Because like we've all seen like the Crit Crab episodes, and we've all read the horror stories of some really horrific stuff that can happen at the table when you are with people that are not safe. And I think it's wonderful to see this explosion of D&D, but I think people, especially when they're talking about therapy and talking about all these kinds of really stuff, they just need to be a bit cleverer with it. And because people they look at, say, something like Dimension 20 or Taz or Critical Role, and it's like, most of these people are friends, and they have been friends all their lives. And the organizations or companies that they work for that they're streaming with also would have people on staff to watch after their mental health. That is why they can do those things that they do. Like, yeah, I just see a lot of, I just am very wary of it and try and be like, I am 100% behind D&D as therapy in a clinical setting with educated people who know what they're doing.
I think like that's the key. Like step one, are you in a clinical setting? No, do not proceed. We're done.
Yeah.
And it could be that like that simple. I mean, we've had, I mean, at this point, I've had like 3 or 4 different people that are legit doctors and therapists on to talk about it. And that's just it. And it's like, they're not practicing when they're playing D&D outside of the clinical environment. Cause that's a very specific game designed to do specific things based on what those patients need.
And the ethical questions of being a therapist and then going to your mate's home game and being all like, yes, you have none of you give me permission, but I am now going to analyze you all. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, let me dissect your psyche while we play this game. No, thank you. Yeah. Nobody should go there. I don't even want to be there.
And it's like the wonderful thing about role-playing games, and I guess the thing that I think why people find a lot of satisfaction in these tabletop role-playing games that you can't get in computer games is you can do anything. You can be anything you want to be. You're not constrained by the code in a game. But that also comes with responsibilities, and it comes with understandings and having to look after each other, really, when it comes down to it's the key. It is great power, but also can be somewhat dangerous.
Now, I've seen plenty of people use D&D as an outlet, but that's fine. Like everyone has something that they use to vent, right? Like, within reason. Like my buddy Mark would always call me up and be like, "Hey, are we going to play this weekend? Like, I had a bad week at work. I need to kill shit." So I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah, absolutely.
But also I've also had people at the table like trying to inflict their traumas or worse kinks on you at the table are like, no, thank you.
No. You and the DM want to do that in a one-on-one session, that's your business, and consenting adults off you go, but don't bring it out to everybody else. Cheers. Thanks.
Yeah. So you said you've been involved with MMA in the past. I don't know if you currently still are. Does that creep into your games at all?
It does, but mostly in a way that I find, honestly, TTRPGs and most games horrible representations of actually how real hand-to-hand fighting actually goes. But I think anyone who is like in HEMA or anything like that would kind of like find that like, do I wish as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner that there was a really awesome grappling system? Yes, absolutely. That you could choke people out. 100%. Would that be the most badass thing that I could think of? Totally. But it just, you got to start thinking about layers of complexity. And I think just have fun when it comes to that kind of stuff. Really, like I love it when my players, I really encourage, some of my homebrew rules really encourage, like, describe to me how you hit it. Like, and it can be difficult when you're streaming for a long period of time. People get tired. And so you just are like, I've been fighting this thing for 2 hours. I just want to hit it. Can I just kill it now?
I just want it to die. Yeah.
But I love hearing people's different descriptions. But yeah, it just, what can you do? Like, unless you want to have another 20 rules on things. Like unarmed is cool, but it doesn't really work. Like,
I don't like simulationism. I don't like simulation games at all.
No, not at all. Dude, I'm the kind of person who loves computer games, plays them to death, but still puts them on story mode. Because I grew up, when I grew up with games with like Heroes Quest and Police Quest and Day of the Tentacle and all those kinds of LucasArts games and the good old Sierra games where it was like, action, whatever, it's the story and it's this. So, action, meh.
Yeah. Well, also too, like from the perspective of games that are like really realistic and brutal, it's a very specific game style that especially if it takes a long time to make a character, and you get into the game and like within 5 minutes you're
You
dead.
did.
Like there's nothing fun about real guns in a game because like
No.
when you get shot you die. Like also like even in like I've heard people complain about 5e because like the rest mechanics, and they're like, I only think you should be able to get hit points back by magical healing. I'm like, because otherwise it's not realistic. I'm like, dude, let me stab you with a sword 7 times and then you can tell me about being realistic.
Yes. I like to call it the Cleric Economy.
Yeah.
So my argument, and this came up with the discussion about disabilities in D&D and how someone's like, people, when some of those comments, you people are wild. As a former disability advocate, I was like, wow, you typed that out loud. But my number one comment was, oh yeah, but there's clerics for that. And I'm like, okay, let's actually have a look at it, right? So you think that there are level 9 and level 13 clerics just roaming the earth anytime a child's born and heals them or fixes this. Or
yeah,
fixes
you
that.
need at least greater restoration, right? And that's like...
It's like, and I would still argue in my concept of how they would work.
We can't even get rid of exhaustion.
If you're blind from birth, oh my God, Space Quest. I loved Space Quest. Sorry, just randomly sorry. But like
no
in my world, if you're blind from birth, using lesser restoration it's fixing a status. It's fixing something that was a magical effect that's been put on you, is what lesser restoration would do in my head. It wouldn't just like fix you from being blind. But when we think about the way the world works, if we use the basic rules, it would cost like 5,000 gold pieces, 500 gold pieces. I did the calculations to get regenerated. How much it would cost? It would take people years to actually be able to do. But the real ethical question and the real philosophy question is, right, so if you had clerics who were just running around healing everything all the time, and we're not even going to talk about the like complete erasure of people with disabilities and just pretending they don't exist when it comes to that, and that may or must be fixed, and all of that problems when it comes to that, and like totally killing someone's whole life experience. But if you had a world where clerics were just running around, reviving people, regenerating people's limbs, and fixing any illness or sickness that ever existed, life would mean nothing. Life would have no risk. You have the economy value of how much power would clerics have in the world. Obscene amounts of power.
They'd be your villains. They'd have to be your villains pretty much.
They would have obscene amounts of power and total control over societies. And I would argue that people were talking in it as if it was going to be this like utopian world where there was no endless suffering. No, I would argue if you were in a situation where you could easily get healed from anything you were ever hurt for and brought back to life, and there'd be no ever linking injuries for anything, life would mean less. People would hurt people more because it would just be so easy to fix. What does it matter if I lose my arm in a fight? I'll just go all gung flat because I can just find a cleric that would fix it. And they're in this really weird chain of logic. If you had a world where healing was just around everywhere and fixed every single problem, then I think the world would be inherently more violent because of it, because of this lack of risk, because people wouldn't see risk and you just engage in fights whenever, because there'd always be someone there to fix it. You wouldn't have a problem. And so that tension of a fight and a tension of a standoff is one of the things that I love the most in D&D or any kind of those like story writing moments where the party either is, especially if it's like you as the DM are like saying, do not fight this person. Do not fight this. This is too soon. Run away. Run away right now. And that tension moment of, do you fight? Do you negotiate? Do you flee? Do you try to persuade? That's the inherent tension before things start. And then you either go from it's like, why when someone says roll initiative, it's this like bang, that's the moment where everything starts, from that moment of tension where that like it's this like rubber band that keeps getting pulled the longer you drag it out. And then when whatever happens, that's when that tension goes. But if there is no risk there's no risk, then there's no tension. Then nothing matters. And so that's why I have this, one of the problems I have with like clerics fix everything issue. And when you think about the power level that level 9 and level 13 characters are supposed to be, they're supposed to be obscenely powered.
That was kind of like the cool thing about the Eberron campaign setting when it first came out in 3rd edition was like the uber high level characters were like 12th, 14th, right? Where like in previous editions and maybe even now, you have Ilminster running around who's like 20th level or beyond. It's like, you're like, why are you asking me to fix this problem? Where's Dritster or Elminster, But in Eberron, like they kind of said, well, you know what? We need a reason to have adventurers and players do the stuff because like political power and mechanical power aren't the same thing in the game, right? And also like a lot of times in your games, like your priests shouldn't actually be clerics. They're just they're just like dudes that kind of have a job and they know the lore and they know their rituals and they do the ceremonies and stuff that are not magical in nature at all.
100%. Yeah, I think the cleric is a really Doug said that 5e doesn't scale well with the playstyle that's emerged due to streaming, for sure. And it doesn't in that way, like, at all. So, there is obviously the whole issue that I have with, like, people with disabilities aren't there to be fixed. There's lots of people with lots of disabilities and lots of life experiences that can bring amazing color to your stories. But just this concept of, like, how to say this, either they don't exist because of historical reasons, which aren't actually historical. I just made it up because I watched the 300 one time. And I think that that's what's happened to all disabled people throughout history, which is ridiculously incorrect. Or, magic just fixes everything. Well, again, if magic just fixes anything, why are there any adventures? It's like when you tell someone, make a character that wants to have an adventure. They want to have an adventure. If you have to spend, after every session, your character's like, I think I'm going to leave now because I was just a farmer and I want to go back to my farm and I really don't want to be a hero. Why did you make them? It's okay to be a commoner. Just let the guy be a commoner. So
my character wouldn't. It's a version of my character wouldn't do that, which I'm just like, well, why are you here as a player then? Make a character that would, or figure out why this character that wouldn't is. That's where the fun can happen, right? Like I've seen players do that. It's like, no, it's not something their character would do or would want to do, but this is why they are doing it, right? That can be a lot of fun and create great scenarios at the table.
I know, it's amazing. I mean, it's like the one thing I love at the moment, and it's really it sucked me in how creative the community is for all like the mini ranting and especially on D&D TikTok and Twitter, and there's been a little bit of drama lately. There's bit of drama.
There's always drama.
But I mean, the creativity is beautiful and amazing and fantastic.
I'm kind of like in the middle of the road with most of this stuff. Like, and like one is like, well, it's your game. Do whatever you want to do. Like in your game, as long as your table agrees. But like, I've seen everything from the spectrals, and like you said, they wouldn't exist to every dungeon should have a ramp and be handicap accessible. I'm like, that kind of defeats the purpose of a dungeon and or a monster's lair, right? Like, they don't want people to come. That's why they're not going to make it inaccessible for regular people.
Yeah, and like, there's 120 different creative ways to do it. My favorite post that I saw was from another amazing creator, and who said, "Why have you got problems with people in wheelchairs when you have centaurs who can't climb walls? They can't climb hills, but people are still happy to play centaurs."
Yeah.
Like
the players can get over it. They can figure it out when you play the game, right? Yeah. And like, I was happy, like, because for the longest time, people are like, how would I make like a blind sword master character or a blind character? And it was really hard to do without magic until Tasha's came out.
Yep.
And then like we actually were able to do the character build, and like at first level, they were an effective character. They are blind, and we used no magic. You know, the blind fighting combined with the alert feat actually makes someone pretty functional. And then like as you get higher level and you can access magic, it makes it even easier. And then there's like cool ways to take that what would be considered a disadvantage and turn it to your advantage. And
Yes.
there's fun things that you can do with it. But before that, it was impossible without like homebrewing rules and making things up.
One of my favorite things is like give an advantage, take it a disadvantage. So if you're going to make something unique and different, make it be an advantage or a disadvantage. So let's say, for example, you have a spellcaster who is mute for whatever reason, damage throat box, pull in that way, whatever. And they perform all their spells just using their hands and components, but just that no verbal component at all. So they have the advantage that they can't be affected by silence and that they can do it sneakily because they never have to use any words. However, if they get restrained, then they can't cast. So you have an advantage. And in this game specifically, that's a specific disadvantage because they have advantages and disadvantages to their unique way that they do something.
Interestingly enough, like we did 2 different videos, one on the number of spells you could just cast without verbal components, as well as ones that were only verbal components. So there is a lot of space just in there. And then also like there is no reason why, like you said, you can't just tweak things. And like I think in our own personal games, these aren't things we think about very often, but also I can speak for our group and be like, if a player came to our table and was like, I want to do this thing, or I want this, and this is important to me, and this is why, we're the kind of people who've been like, okay, well, let's figure that out.
Just make it work.
Yeah.
Just make it work. No one wants to hear your realism story diatribe of why something wouldn't work. Just make it work. Make it fun.
And
that's
also,
the cool thing.
Like, gaming for us is, probably 75% of gaming for us isn't the game. It's just hanging out with our friends. It's like the thing we do when, when our buddies come over. So.
And it's interesting. Like, TikTok is a very different style than YouTube. So I probably did start that whole discussion out in a very incendiary way. And it started a discussion in which we were able to actually have a deeper discussion. But with the TikTok style, 15 seconds is actually ideal. It is ideal. 60 seconds, you can still get a good video in. 3-minute videos, you do it because you're really passionate about it and you want to do it because that's your work that you've done for you. And it's this thing that you're proud of. And you really want the good 3 minutes to talk about. So sometimes it's like, I did a couple in a row and it was literally like, yeah, if you don't include people with disabilities, you suck and are uncreative. The second one was, I've got a message from your players that they're too scared to tell you, which is, nobody likes your DNPC. They suck. Main character syndrome much.
Yeah.
We want them to go away. Do I think there's a gazillion bits of nuance between this point and this point? Absolutely. But the TikTok algorithm is a very, very funny thing. And I would argue that it's not as gamifiable as YouTube is in the same way. And our audience they want it now. And they want it fast. They will engage with you in other mediums for longer form. So they will follow you to streaming. They will follow you if they like you and they like your style. But there is some amazing, the thing about TikTok is, especially because I'm from Australia, I'm not making any money from this. I'm doing this because I love it. It's fun. I've met some amazing creative people that I get to play games with people around the other side of the world. I get to get sneak peeks of stuff and just have some really super amazing creative people around me who inspire me.
Is the US the only place where people get compensated on TikTok?
The UK as well, and in one other country. So, you know, I still have to like try and work towards getting sponsorships and things like that. But blowing up on TikTok is not something you can ever guarantee. And sometimes there are people within my creative group who have had videos that you just make this one-off stupid video that's unrelated to anything to do with D&D, and it goes off like 1 million+ views, and you literally have to get rid of your account and start again because your account's ruined, because you get all these followers and likes from, I don't want to say the wrong people, but people who aren't actually interested in your actual content.
Yeah.
And so your content stops going out to the people who actually want to, like, the quality of engagement matters. That's what you have to look for. You have to look for and go, okay, are the people who are engaging with me talking to me, and are there people doing stitching off me? Am I bouncing off other creators? Are we doing fun duets? Are we creating something? Because you can't, especially when it comes to D&D. Cosplay is a lot more popular. And so that's why I do some of it every now and then. It's not really my bag 100%, but I'll put some dopey barbarian makeup on and growl at the photo and do a meme.
Well, you've done it pretty well, so I don't know.
I've gotten away with it so far. Trust me, but
if
my
it's not
makeup
your
game
bag,
has gone
you're
up.
faking it very well. So,
and you know, you can ask a lot of the creators. We do the memes because we have to. We do the memes quite often because we have to break stuff up when we really get passionate about stuff that we want to talk about. And it also happens that, say, for example, I'm really stoked about it, and I've got to be able to share some amazing creators with disability and highlight them and show them off. But there is content that I've filmed over the last week that I haven't been able to put on TikTok because if I do now, it's dumb. Because at the moment, TikTok thinks disability and D&D is what I talk about, and it'll give me views based off that. And my videos that are around that, it'll give views. So you get, it's a very, Randy's like, Seacow Explosion. That's why I'm glad I've never actually had a viral video. Because if you want to build engaging content that you can work with other people, if you get the wrong viral video, you have to start again, which just sounds insane, but it's true.
So bizarre. A friend of mine just started creating YouTube videos, and he started doing the YouTube shorts. I'm like, why are you putting these shorts on YouTube? They should be on TikTok. Like, I don't think they do anything for you on YouTube.
I think I love the TikTok element because it's very personable. You actually do get to know people. I mean, that can be good and bad for parasocial relationships, which I'm sure you've experienced. But you know, it's hard work. We've got to put out 3 videos a day if you want to stay relevant. 3 videos a day.
The early days of Nerdarchy, that's we were doing that in YouTube.
It's exhausting sometimes. Just like I don't want to.
Yeah, we used to. So we would we'd do 2 videos a day, and then we would do 1 live a day for 3, and then like we'd like film twice a week. And like if you're putting up 10, you want to film at least like 11 or 12 just to have some extra content floating around. But occasionally it would be like we wouldn't be able to get that extra day in and have to do it all at once. And by the end of the day, you just want to put a shotgun in your mouth and pull the trigger with your toe. You just like, I don't want to say another word. And I don't want to say another word. And I am naturally an introvert anyway. So like being that on for that long just like gives me a throbbing headache.
And you know, TikTok's it's bizarre, right? So on your computer, you can schedule uploads, but on your phone, you can't. Yeah. But once you take it with your phone and you save it to your phone, it loses quality. So then the video, if you upload it through your computer, the upload quality is crappy in comparison. And I guess the other thing that's good about TikTok is the barrier to entry is a lot lower for people. So we can most of us are just doing this on our phones. You know, stick a phone, get a ring light because it's dark, And you go up in level. Like I bought a Yeti because I was an idiot, but now I've just made it my whole personality.
All about the Yeti life.
Oh, mate, so much so that the lovely Seacow Explosion, who is in the chat, made a monster out of me, which included my Yeti fur that I have on my back, and another creator, Snarks and Bourbon, made a patron from me, which includes the followers of this patron seem to have a voice that appears to be magnified as if coming from a microphone, and all my followers get a +3 in charisma and are immune to the silence spell. Nice. And that's the kind of stuff that's so much fun about D&D TikTok. Like, we take the shit out of each other. We make monsters out of each other. We make heroes out of each other. We do all these little things. We directly attack. Like, there's an amazing creator called the Plot Doctor who is in the UK, and amazing storyteller. Literally, his whole bag is making people cry. And so one day in the middle of normal night, my night, but all the Americans were sleeping. One of the Americans, Seacow Explosion, was up, sent me and another Australian creator called Brooklyn Tuesday, who is massive. She's going to have some really cool streaming shows coming up. She's a really awesome chick. Just a video saying the Americans are asleep. Send pictures of kangaroos. So we did that, and I picked Roger. He's this famous Australian kangaroo who's like built like a barbarian. He's like, woof. And then for some reason, these conversations just start where someone's like, I was like, oh, he's clearly a paladin. And then we went to Winnie the Pooh. Yeah. And then everyone started setting out, having arguments about what characters in Winnie the Pooh would be what class. And then the Plot Doctor came up with this horrifyingly sad idea of like modern Pooh, where the 100 acre wood has been cut down because Christopher Robin sold out to developers. And Rue is like, what was it? Winnie the Pooh's an alcoholic, and all this stuff's happening, and created this really thing that actually made quite a few people really upset that he destroyed their childhoods, and to turn into a game. And then another DM is literally turning it into a game, a one shot for a con. And that's the kind of creative rolling that happens in TikTok, which is really cool and unique. Someone will say one thing and someone will go, oh, and then people will just pick up on these different streams of creativity. And then all of a sudden you've got this really cool thing that's at the other end of it. And that's what I really like about it. It's like being able to bounce all these ideas off these different creators.
We've done a couple videos based off of TikToks. One from the mythology guy and one from Patrick Waller, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's great because TikToks are so short. You can just put the whole TikTok right in your video and be like, hey, this is what we're talking about. Check it out. Go find the person over here. And you know, like, I've been really enjoying TikTok for the D&D community and RPG community in general, just because I feel like it's the most innovative thing to come to RPGs in a long time. You know, the conversations are different. It's, you know, it's very diverse over there, you know, where like we got a lot of flack when we did Savor Dice, and it was a collab of well-known YouTubers. And shocking, they're all old white guys, or, well, not that old, but it's a bunch of white guys. So we were given a hard time about it. But the premise was, it's like, see your favorite YouTubers play D&D together. And they're just, at the time, there really wasn't any, you know, people of color or women that had large YouTube channels in this space. And there still isn't many.
That's the TikTok barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Like, issue, like advantage. You just you see someone. I was triggered, it's a funny word to use it, but I was started because of another creator called the Wicked DM. Her name's Chelsea. She is very much like me, and she talks a lot about ethics and world building and tension and building that kind of stuff. And she did this post that my brain was just like, I had a shitty camera and on my phone, and I was like, you know what? I need to say something. And so you just see people like you feel comfortable, and you're like, well, if that person, and that's the thing, that if that person can do it, then why can't I? And you're right when the diversity is massive, and it's massive in a fantastic way. So one of our stalwarts of our little community at the moment, I love him to death, is Jeremiah McCoy, or the basics of the game, who was on YouTube for a very, very long time. And he's kind of like a elder statesman, and he is fantastic. He and a couple of others are really great in following the history of D&D and sharing that with us. But he's still very progressive and comes up with some of the most fantastic ideas and slaps down trolls like you wouldn't believe. We have an amazing queer community who tell some really cool stories. Fantastic trans community. And I think people are challenging boundaries, but in a good way, because it's all about, I know change is hard, and I know change can feel strange. And when people want to sit at your table and they feel like they were previously excluded from the table, you might not have felt that you did, but those people still felt like they didn't previously belong. But now they feel like they belong and they want to be welcomed at the table. And I love the community. I think to talk around a recent controversy, the accusation that D&D TikTok especially and D&D Twitter hate white cis old men really offended me, because I was like, no, just you. Because I love Jeremiah. I'm super passionate about the work that he does. And I love a whole bunch of older D&D guys who are like you guys, who are like the OGs really of this kind of media, and have been doing, because there's so many resources out for us now because of the work that you guys have done. Like for a lot of us, we couldn't have understood. People go, oh, I just want to watch a video about how to play Deadlands, or I want to watch a video about how to do this. We do short form, but you guys have done the long form work. And we get to play off that and build understanding of that. And people get to watch videos about lore, because not all these books the books aren't actually as accessible for this generation and the way that they like to get this information. And, I just want to make everyone feel like they're welcome at my table. I enjoy a good combat bash and killing things and smiting things just as much as, I'll be honest, I love horror and I really like making my players cry. It's a personal achievement of mine.
They all get a cup in front of them for their tears.
So like, yes, feed me your tears. I made you sad. Now I'm happy.
Well, I'm very impressed with all the TikTokers, and I'm like, I can't believe they can give out so much either entertainment or valuable information in 60 seconds or less, right? Like, because me and Ted can't even introduce ourselves in that amount of time, let alone say anything meaningful.
I think we do. You do get better at talking in a really short period of time.
Yeah.
Hi, I wanted to talk about this and this saving dice and artifices and quite often you get good at that. It's a different way of putting across. The exhausting thing about it, though, is because you've got such a short period of time, you often have to go back and make clarification videos.
Yeah.
Which is a pain in the butt. Because it
gives you another reason to do a video.
30 seconds. It's like, also, or you put like this disclaimer of, sometimes I will literally go, it's your table, play the way you want to play, but here's my opinion, deal with it.
Yeah.
Or I'm just here to inspire you. Or so it can be difficult in that way. But I know that I've met some really awesome, great people. I know that I have some people who follow everything that I do and are amazingly supportive and make me feel wanted and loved, and that like they're interested in what I'm doing and what I have to say. And I think if you have any community, yes. Yeah. Sorry, I just read something. Seacow Explosion, or Randy, just said something really important. Your identity as a D&D TikToker is very important. You need to establish your thing, and then you can shortcut a lot of stuff. Which is why, after a little bit of another controversy that happened previously before the most recent controversy, everyone started giving their yes, yeah, because I'm not really here to give them any promotion. Everyone on D&D TikTok started giving themselves titles, and it really did help with, it helps with your brand. Your brand is like, very much part of the vibe. So my brand is like the gay aunt of D&D TikTok. I do talk a lot about queer stuff. I will try and talk about ethics with you. I will try and make sure that people are safe in what they're doing. And then occasionally I'll come up with some dumb memes. But your identity and what you are makes a big deal because it shortcuts a lot. Randy's very right. It shortcuts a lot of the questions about what you're there to do and what message you're trying to put across. But, sometimes the memes are just fun. One of my mates got a guy to do a sound, which is like D&D is the cure for all sadness. And then it's like the next person's like, no, you need medication. They're like, no, D&D is the cure. And so now there's like these duet videos that are going around everywhere of someone being like, yes. And there's like, no, you need medication. Stop it. And they're like, no, D&D is the cure. And just fun stuff like that because it's relatable. Like there's this sense of belonging because we all have our in-jokes. We all have these like in-jokes that are funny. Like, yeah, I got over the bard meme pretty quickly. The slutty, horny bard meme got a bit old for me a bit quickly. But there are so many memes that are so like anyone who plays D&D or generally TTRPGs go, relatable. We're on the same vibe. And it makes you laugh and you laugh out loud and it's just fun. And I think it's a great place to build community in that way.
Well, that's the thing about the hobby in general, right? Like, and why those memes work is because you can meet someone you've never met before, but you still have all these shared experiences and you can connect with them instantly, via these characters that you've played. So
I'll tell you what, sometimes doing project management for ideas and concepts can be really difficult in meetings what you're having with other D&D creators. Because one of you gets triggered about talking about a character or a game that you're playing, and then you're there for like 45 minutes talking about D&D. And you're like, wait,
we didn't accomplish anything.
We were supposed to do a collab. We're supposed to be doing something. Shit. Okay. Oh yeah, but I just want to say this one more thing about my character. And that's the essential key, the love of the game.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. It is we said before, it's a gateway drug. It is a gateway drug to so many imagining worlds. I made a joke the other day to one of my friends and we were talking about, Tinder and dating and all that kind of stuff because I'm single, ladies. Hi. And at the moment, on Tinder, like every lesbian has pictures of them hiking everywhere. And I'm like, I don't want to go hiking. I want to go sit in a room with my friends and all have a joint hallucination. Thank you very much. That's what I like to do with my time. Have joint hallucinations with my friends. Thank you very much.
You're like, all of these people are just going to leave me behind. They just want to hike. No, thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
I don't like the outdoors myself. So so most of my life I worked in and around construction. So I've always been outside and like all the family get-togethers are outside. I'm like, no, I've had enough outside. I don't want outside anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't have the standard pandemic experience that everyone else has. I live in Tasmania, which is a island off the bottom of Australia, in a town called Hobart, which is our capital city, which is the starting place for HP's Lovecraft from the Mountains of Madness. It's the place where he starts off. They all start off before they go on the boat to Antarctica. And it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. It is gorgeous. We have hills and mountains and creatures there. Nowhere else is it. So I've seen the outside. I've explored it all my life. And we weren't really affected by the pandemic because it's really hard for something to get to you when you're on an island. So I see all these beautiful people and they're all like, I just want to go outside. And I'm like, meh. I'm good.
I just started going back to the gym, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. And I feel like a groundhog emerging from my home, like poking my head out. Is there any more plague out here? Or do I have to go back for another 6 weeks?
Yeah, I just spend my life staying up till 3 a.m. in the morning talking about D&D. That's what I do with my life. And, when all my American friends or my British friends are like, okay, we're going to do a game, try and work it out with Dell's schedule. I'm like, just don't. Just figure out the schedule and I will get myself there and I will suffer the consequences at work the next day. That's just the way it has to be.
Are you familiar with Dead Aussie Gamer?
No.
Michael, I forget his last name, but he's very much like that as well. Because I'm always like, well, I would invite you to the thing, but I know it's gonna be like the middle of the night for you. He's like, I've just switched my schedule.
Yeah, it's like because of the American. Okay, so here's the things that I have to do as an Australian. Sometimes when I post via a VPN, so TikTok thinks I'm in America. And I generally have to post my first post of the American day at 1:00 in the morning. And then I get up, roll out of bed, and then post another thing that I'd already recorded the next day at 7:00 because of American timing. Yeah. If I post anything after like 4:00 my time, nothing. I generally will pick up the Australian audience afterwards. And I do have some Australian fans, which is great. And there's some Australian creators who I'd love to work with. And it's quite funny. One of my great mates who I really enjoy and really desperately want to be in one of her games, Brooklyn Tuesday, is like, yes, I have a game. And it's like, we're going to be playing at 10 a.m. on Saturdays. And I'm like, oh, when my son plays soccer, I thought there was going to be a game I could play without having, nope. And like, I'm playing a game of Unknown Armies, which I'm really excited about because that world and that game system looks crazy fun. But to play that game, which is going to be 6 p.m. Central in August in America on a Sunday night, I've had to take 3 days of leave in the month of August because it's 9 a.m. on a Monday morning.
Ugh. Yeah, you're rid of that pesky job.
Yeah, need money.
Jobs are for suckers.
Don't TikTokers just make all the money?
Being broke is also for being for suckers as well. So
pretty much. You look, if I was 20,
yeah,
I probably would treat this whole game a lot differently. You know, there is definitely careers and opportunities and things like that for people in D&D. You have to put a lot of work into it, as you could clearly attest to. But you really have to make those opportunities for yourself. Me, I'm just like, I'm having fun. I want to leave something behind, teach people stuff, and make good friends and be creative. And
we get at least one Australian in the chat.
Yay, Raven. 3:22. Yes, it is very late in the morning, early in the morning.
Are there kangaroos on your island?
We don't have kangaroos. We have wallabies and what are called patamelons.
I don't know what a patamelon is. I'm going to have to look that up.
Patamelon is like a little kangaroo. They're very cute.
Are they less evil?
Yeah. So our island means that we're the Tassie Devil.
Yeah.
Comes from us. And we also have things like, say, for example, there's platypuses and echidnas everywhere in most places in Australia, but in Tasmania, they're genetically different and have more fur and do different things than the ones on the mainland because we're this strange little island where things evolved differently.
Nice. Platypus is one of the most toxic animals on the planet.
Yes. So the difference, our platypuses, because we have our super harsh winters here, can actually travel on land as well as water, while the ones on the mainland don't. Weird fact about.
I want to have a goblin tribe that ties platypuses upside down to sticks and uses them for weapons. That
would be amazing.
And also,
don't do that in real life. But that would be amazing.
The weird thing is they're not entirely sure why platypuses have these venomous spurs, and like one of the things floated was possibly for mating. I'm like, what? That is a weird kink right there.
Look, I come from the place where everything will kill you. So, we have so much D&D inspiration in our everyday lives, just stuff that's just walking around.
We were playing a Curse of Strahd game and the lake came up in the game. And then like, I'm playing an artificer gnome that rides around in the pouch of its Iron Defender, which is
amazing.
A kangaroo, and then not that it matters for the game mechanics, but then I'm like, can a kangaroo swim? And I started typing in kangaroo something, and one of the first things that comes up is, will a kangaroo drown you? And yes. And I did not know this, but now I do. And then, like, actually, Michael, that also gamer, was telling me, he's like, yeah, it's one of the things you learn as a kid around water. Don't go in if there's a kangaroo, because he's waiting to murder you, apparently.
Control you and hold you down.
They're very good swimmers, and they like to drown things for some reason.
Yeah, we'd like to pretend everything's cute. We give you things like Skippy and all that kind of stuff, but no, things aren't nice. Things aren't nice here. They're very pretty. As Randy and a few other guys, the cassowary is the ultimate monster. It's this like giant bird with this. It's very relate. Well, we have crocodiles, which make American alligators look like babies. They're obscenely insane. But this cassowary is like this bird that's like, it's
a dinosaur.
Yeah, it's pretty much a dinosaur.
Velociraptor with feathers.
Pretty much. It's a velociraptor with pretty blue and red feathers, and it's crazy dangerous. Crazy dangerous.
It just fell out of my head. What are the little tanky things? They're really cute.
Wombats?
But they're bigger than the wombats. Kappa, what are they? They're like they're really fast, and they're like 40-50 pounds of like fur.
Yeah, look, dude, pardon?
Capybaras? Is that right? Nah.
Yeah, those cute things. I like wombats because they're basically like giant fat tanks, and people can hit them with their cars and die.
Yeah, here we just have moose.
Screw up your car.
We have moose and bears.
Ugh. But yes, I love artificers though. They're just wonderful. There's something about having a low wisdom, low charisma, high intelligence artificer who uses flash of genius to explain to other party members what they're the best way to do, what they're actually trying to do to give them a +5. There's just something about that I just am like, I love this so much. And just being like, if you just point at that direction instead of like this like in character rules lawyer who's really annoying, who's like, but they're still helpful. And you're like, if you just point it that way, just 30 degrees that way more, you'll hit that better. I just love it.
I got a lot of use out of that with our battle with Strahd. So we're saving throws. So we're almost like 30 minutes past the time. So I think it's time to wrap it up. But I've really enjoyed talking with you, and really thank you for coming on here in the middle of the night as well.
My pleasure.
Final thoughts before we head on out?
Come check out TikTok. We're a bit crazy, but we're a bit fun as well. We have some really awesome conversations, and just love the game and be nice to each other and don't be dickheads. Really.
Great advice. As always, links are in the description. Until next time, stay nerdy.